Hello there, people of the internet. So I'm currently going through my stuff and like doing some reorganizing and some restructuring and whatnot. And in the process of doing that, I noticed that along with some M95s, I pulled out a bunch of different Italian rifles. So I figured I would sit down in front of the camera, make a video on my Italian rifle collection, or rather the Italian rifles that are in the YouTube arsenal. So I got a good selection of things here. If I get something wrong, I'm sure somebody's gonna go into the comments and tell me. So, first things first, let's start off with the oldest in the collection here. I use that term oldest because it is the oldest model, not the oldest rifle that I have. So this is a Vetterli rifle. This particular one is the 1870/87. I think that's the designation. I could be wrong about that. If I am wrong, then I'll go down in the description or whatever and tell you guys what the actual model designation is. But essentially what this is this is a 10.4, I believe it's 10.4 millimeter Vetterli. That is a black powder rifle. This right here is what the Italians were using way back in the day whenever breech loading black powder guns with like really large bullets were all the rage in military forces. Originally this was a single shot rifle, but as you can see there's a big old magazine down here. The Italians converted a bunch of these Vetterlis into these repeating rifles essentially by essentially adding a magazine onto the bottom of a originally single shot rifle. So now instead of just one shot loading your Vetterli rifle, I think these now hold 4 rounds of ammunition. So you got your 4 rounds. I think that these do load with a special kind of stripper clip. I could be wrong about that, but I kind of remember seeing that. I'm not sure if that was from some guy who made a clip that would work or if that was what the Italians actually used. But bang, and then you can actually cycle your rifle like you would cycle a normal bolt-action rifle versus having to sit there and single-load the things. I have seen ones that were unconverted to where they were still single-shot. Those are cool, but those are exceptionally rare, and unfortunately I do not have one in my collection. So, now we're looking at another Vetterli. This one right here is that same exact rifle, except this one was converted to 6.5 Carcano. So the Vetterli system is not designed for smokeless powder. It is not designed to run 6.5 Carcano ammunition, and so as a result these rifles do have a whole lot of issues. A lot of people will tell you it's because they have a sleeved barrel that comes loose. I've never seen that happen. The sleeved barrel is stair-stepped. The odds of that happening under fire because it's pushing the barrel that way against the stair-stepping is exceptionally small. Normally when these rifles fail, they fail at the locking lugs because the locking lugs are a separate piece from the bolt. That being said, your mileage may vary. There's a million different ways a rifle can fail. This particular one does have some issues with the actual trigger on it, like dropping very, very easy without pulling the trigger. Let's see if I can make that happen. No? Okay. Maybe it's the other one that has more particular issues. I actually have 2 of these rifles, and both of them have triggers that are very sketchy, which is one of the reasons I don't take these out to shoot them. These can be shot with properly loaded 6.5 Carcano, and the trigger on this one is... okay, yeah, that's not terrible, but occasionally these things will just suddenly drop, which is one of the reasons why I feel uncomfortable taking it out to shoot. And that's not necessarily a fault of the rifle design. These particular ones I have are just a little on the worn out side, and they got some issues integrating with the sear and whatnot. This one seems to be not that bad, though, compared to the other one, which drops like every single time. This is my, where's the date on it? Yeah, this is my 1889 rifle. I got one of these from the 1870s that is just, it's very, very unsafe. Definitely not something that I would take to shoot on a regular basis. Takes Carcano clips, takes Carcano ammo, other than the fact that Carcano ammo is just a little bit too high pressure for these things. So you want to make sure that you undercharge it if you decide to take them out to shoot. Alright, now speaking of Carcano, that is what we are moving on to. Right over here, I've got an 1891 long rifle. This particular one was in rough shape, so I went ahead and I did a refurbishment on it. The stock, I really only cleaned it. It definitely has seen better days, that's that's for sure. I'm not sure if I want to refinish it or if I want to just stick oil on it or if I want to like dye it, make it darker. I'm not positive on what I'm going to do with it, but I do know that this rifle does have some fairly decent rifling inside of it. I have not taken it out to actually shoot it. I'm willing to bet it would be quite accurate judging by the condition of the barrel. If not, then I do have a lathe that I can use to counterbore this thing if I do need to. But yeah, I actually have two of these. Another one of these is right back there, which I don't feel like going to get. It looks identical to this. And that one right there is basically a smooth bore. There's no rifling in it left whatsoever. I actually have videos of me taking a 6.5 Carcano round, like the actual bullet, dropping it down the barrel, and it dropped all the way through the barrel and came out of the receiver. People were saying it was drilled out. It was not. I full-on showed videos of the inside of the thing, and those are not drill marks. Those are dunes and valleys. That thing is just worn out from being shot so stupidly much. Okay, up next, I have... Which one should I grab? I'm going to grab this one right here. I guess we'll go in chronological order. This is a... one of their Mascetto carbines. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Essentially, it's one of their cavalry carbines, complete with little bayonet on it. This one is an earlier version of it. They got like push buttons and levers and all sorts of stuff going on with these bayonets. This particular one is a Brescia made. This is a 1918 one, so a World War I pattern Mascetto carbine, if I am pronouncing that correctly. I actually have like 5 different Mascetto carbines that all have the bayonets on them. Some push buttons, some levers, some like pull tabs. They really had quite a few designs with these things. But I've got them from, I think this is my earliest one, and then it goes all the way up to a couple of World War II patterns. All chambered in 6.5. They did have some 7.35 versions of this rifle, which were like an M38 in the guise of a 1891 Mascetto. So that's what these are. They're all basically the same, so I'm not gonna bother going through all of my different Mascetto rifles. I do have one somewhere, not positive on which pile it's in, but I got one that is more torn up than all the others. It looks like it hit some shrapnel damage or something like that. But that particular one is exceptionally accurate. I've done accuracy testing with it. You can go watch it on the channel. It is by far my most accurate Carcano. This one right here is also quite good. I've taken this one out and shot it. As a matter of fact, I've shot all of these rifles, and they tend to just shoot good. All right, what would be the next chronological order one? Do I have? Where is my M38? I have it somewhere. I do believe that's it back there. Okay, we are having a look at this one. This is a, I can relatively feel confident saying this because they have so many different versions of Carcano. I think that this is a 9124. We have a barrel band that is separate from the nose cap, and we have a long rifle sight on this thing, so I think this is a 9124. And I do believe that these rifles used to originally be Carcano long rifles that were cut down and converted into carbines. This particular one is relatively inaccurate. I do have way more accurate Carcanos that are not this one. But that being said, this right here is probably my favorite Carcano rifle that I own. It's just so short and lightweight and handy, and the bolt is so smooth. And 6 rounds of 6.5 Carcano, that's not exactly a powerhouse of a cartridge, but it still is relatively a full power cartridge. I guess that point is a little bit debatable. You know what? I should actually make a video on that. Which cartridges are full power and which are not? Where's that line drawn? Anyway, this right here, one of my favorite Carcanos. Set it aside to look at something else. I guess I'll go ahead and I'll look at a couple of these. I have, I don't know how many, Sporterized Carcanos. Just over the years, I've gotten my hands on Sporterized Carcanos because they've just fallen into my lap, I guess. I have, this particular one is quite the nice one in comparison to some other Sporterized Carcanos I have. Most of the ones I have really aren't accurate or functional or anything like that, because they used to be long rifles that were like cut down, and the Italians had their gain twist rifling, and they just don't stabilize the bullets. So most of the Sporterized Carcanos that I've come across, they keyhole at like 50 yards, and it's just not ideal. This one right here, this does have a bent bolt handle on it, so I think that this was, judging by the length of the rear sight, which is no longer there, but judging by the metal piece right here where the rear sight would kind of like sit, I think that this is a carbine that has not had its barrel cuts, judging by the bolt handle and judging by the sight. But again, this is Sporterized, so I'm not positive about that. But I'm willing to bet that if I were to take this out and shoot it, it would shoot quite well because the rifling in it does look good. Again, just I've got several Sporterized Carcano rifles. I figured I'd throw that into the video. Alright, where is my M38? I think it's over here. Give me a second, guys. Okay, I have returned. This right here is my Carcano M38. At like the very end of, well, not necessarily the very, very end, but late into the production of Carcanos, Italy tried going to a 7.35 diameter bullet versus the original 6.5 round just because they wanted a larger, heavier hitting round than what it is that they were using. And then World War II broke out, and Italy was like, oh god, that's a really bad idea, let's not do that. So in the process of them trying to do that, they also came out with these rifles here. These rifles have a fixed 200-yard sight, which is well within the realms of like what most of your combat engagement distances would have taken place at. It's just a far simpler sight, far cheaper to produce, far faster to produce, far more economic. Definitely a really good option. The 7.35 Carcano has a little less power than 308, but I'd say it's like a 150 grain bullet moving about 2,600 feet per second versus a 308, which is a 150 grain bullet moving about, 2,800 feet per second, depending on your loading, manufacturer, gunpowder used, etc., etc. Somewhere around that ballpark. So a little bit less powerful than a 308. It's also a true 300 diameter bullet versus your 7.62 rounds, which can vary. Here in the United States, 7.62 is a 308 bullet. You don't want to shove 308s through this thing because it is a different diameter bullet. I've taken this particular rifle out and shot it plenty. I typically load my 7.35 rounds to about 30-40 crag specs just to conserve brass life, and so I don't beat the hell out of myself because this rifle is relatively short and relatively lightweight, although 7.35 Carcano ammo is still not overly powerful. They did make these in 6.5 Carcano, and I think I have one of those right here. If this is what I think it is. Yep, this right here, although it has been Sporterized, is one of those M38s that is in 6.5. It says right there on the rear side, Cal 6.5. The Italians were still making these rifles, but after they got done trying to make them in 7.35, and just logistically that was a horrible nightmare, they ended up going with the 6.5 round again. After this right here, they went back to their more convoluted roller coaster style rear sight for their Carcanos in 1941, I think. I don't have one of those rifles. It would be really cool if I did. Maybe one of the Sporterized rifles I have are, but I'm doubtful. They all basically look like cut down 1891 long rifles. But yeah, so that is my collection of Italian rifles. I think that's pretty much all of them, or at least the general consensus of what most of them are. Like, for example, the Mascettos. I'm not gonna bother showing you guys 5 Mascettos, which are basically identical. I got several 1891 long rifles. I showed you guys one. You all know what it looks like. Again, they're all basically identical. Basically, all of your Carcano rifles are gonna be very, very similar. Your long rifles, I think they only made the 1891 long rifle, and the rest are just a bunch of different variations of carbine. And if you have one carbine, assuming it's not a long rifle that's been cut down, but if you have one carbine, then you basically have them all because they're all exceptionally similar. There's some differences with barrel bands, some differences with nose caps, and of course the Mascettos have the bayonet strapped right onto them. But they're all pretty gosh darn similar. So, thanks for watching. Appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below is a link to all this stuff. Go check it out. What time is it? Oh, goodness. I gotta go. So, I'll see you guys at the next episode, I guess.
Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.